this is still hot. So what I'm going to do is we're going to work on the bottom of the squash. It's pretty dark down there too. We're going to have to do at least one more coat up on top, but definitely want to get another coat down in this area. So we'll start there. Use my blending and glazing medium. And again, I want to go with the water glaze a little bit further than where I want the paint to go, so we want to cover that all in. So this area is pretty dark. And again, don't freak out if it's too dark as you apply it, because watercolors dry lighter. That's why we have so many different coats of colors. Now this is just another glaze, so it's not really any detail yet. As you can see on here, there's a lot of speckling up on the top, but down below it's nice and dark. Making up some more color. And again, wherever you lay your brush down first is going to be the darkest, so if that's at the bottom, then that's where you want to put it first, and the water will take it up to the top and lighten it that way as well. Start doing a little bit of the speckles now, just to help soften that edge in. Make it look more like the squash. Just kind of dabbing my brush here and there to give it that speckled look. Alright, I want to keep my hands out of that, hopefully. And I'm going to turn this around so now we can do the apple. Now I'm not going to add a ton of water here. I'm going to have some in my brush, and we're going to use the same color. And we'll set this right here. And we're just going to do a couple little... Again, this is dry, wet on dry paper. And the harder you push down, the more paint you'll have come out. This whole apple seems to be pretty speckly. Let's go ahead and wet the bottom of the apple, and it starts right up about here. I want to go a little further than where I want the paint to stop. Picking up my blending and glazing medium water because I don't want this to dry too quickly on me. I want to have some time to work with it if I need to. And just at the bottom here is where we need to put that glaze. So, and we've got the color that we need. I'm going to add just a touch of lemon yellow back into it. There we go. To kind of brighten that up. And again, this is just a glaze. Don't freak if it gets too dark, because it will dry lighter. You want to go right up to your edge. There we go. Now I'm going to take my eradicator here. To go over on this side, so we're just going to remove that a little bit. There we go. Alright, I'll let that dry. Needs to be wet. We want all the light areas covered too, and the green areas, so this whole bottom of this squash. Again, you want to be gentle. You don't want to remove the color underneath or the color that you just applied either. Okay, just a mixture of the lemon yellow and Sennler yellow light. And I'm going to use a little bit of a larger brush. This is actually a Billy Scholl brush. It's a size 6, but her size 6 is much larger than the American size 6, so it's almost an 8. Yeah. See how that's going to turn that red almost an orange, and that's exactly what we want. And the green's going to brighten up a little bit with the yellow on top, so that's a good thing too. Go right up to your edges. Just kind of sweep it on, but gently. You don't want to go crazy with the pressure. Okay, and cool. So what I'm going to do first of all is put some water. Move my paint up so it doesn't run into the other colors there. On the apple, because we're going to glaze the entire apple. I'm going to go right over the highlight, right over the orange. And this is going to make it go a little bit more orange, but that's okay, because that's what that apple is. And we'll go right over the green. That'll soften that green in a little bit. Okay, checking the side to make sure I've got everything wet. the way I want it, which is just a nice smooth glaze over the entire apple, other than the leaf, of course. Keeping the sides nice and clean, so good, there we go. Now I do have some of that color in my brush, so we're going to just swoop it on gently. Don't want to remove all the little dots we just put in. And don't feel bad about going over your highlight, because that will stay lighter. And if you do it gentle enough, you don't lose any of your dots that we just put in. But it's going to turn them a little bit more orange, which is perfect. Making sure the edges stay nice. Okay, I'll let that dry. A mixing brush. So let's put some water on there first. And it's going to be just the bottom half, which is the dark spots. And then we'll put a yellow glaze over this as well. And I just went right over the yellow that I don't want to do. So we'll get that out of there. Pick up the color I just mixed, and away we go. Trying to stay out of the yellow as best we can. We don't want to cover up all of the previous colors. Again, we're laying in values as we go. A bit of an orange cast on the gourd so it blends in with the rest of the projects here. And it's not the entire gourd. It's just going to be where I had darkened it once before. It's going to be a little bit more orange. And we're going to start there, and then we're going to come down and glaze the entire squash with the yellow. Now, full disclosure with this gourd, yellow gourd here, I did soften in those lines that I put in. So if you're following along with me, that's something you would want to do as well. They just looked a little bit too much like they were being outlined, and I didn't care for that, so I just softened them in with water, basically, is all I did. Okay, so we got that in. Now let me grab my color here, and where I want it to be the darkest is where I'm going to apply my brush, or put my brush down, and that's going to be right up against the squash. And I put in a lot more water than the area I want to cover, so. But this is going to tie it into the rest of the design with the orange on here. And anytime you're putting any darker color like that in, you always want to make sure there's a lot at the bottom because that makes it set down. We are going to put shadows on these. This is a still life. They're sitting down. And I'm just adding in more water here so it has a place to go. And it doesn't dry in a harsh line. There we go. If you have an 8, go for it. That's what you want to use. And again, you're applying this gently, going right over everything, highlights and green and red and everything. And it's just going to turn everything orange, which is what we want. Soften everything in together. Brighten up those greens a little bit. Some of that. And then I'm going to add water to the rest of the top. So we can just continue to glaze the whole top here. Now some of these greens are pretty dark, so you want to be careful when you're adding water. You don't want everything to turn green. Just gently sweeping this in. I'm going to go over this whole side here so it all matches, same color then. I'm going to do this in thirds, I think, because it's, again, such a large area. But I bought these two, and the apple I just picked out of, I think it was Pixabay, that picture, which they are invaluable. Pixabay and Unsplash for getting designs. I needed a real pretty soft apple, and I wanted it to have a lot of orange in it so it would match the rest of the pumpkin design. But the pumpkin was mine. The pumpkin squash and the gourd I picked up that day. I think I picked up a plain pumpkin that day too. Oh, and I bought some apple or corn. Got some pictures of that we can always paint sometime in the future. So it was just Sentinel Yellow Light, Lemon Yellow, and Golden Ochre were the 3 colors, and just a touch of the Golden Ochre. We didn't do a lot of that. Alright, so we're going to do this over the entire gourd. So I'm just going to gently sweep in all my glazing water. And again, this is going to dry darker than what it looks like right now as you apply it. But this has just a little bit of a different yellow cast to it than the other 2 items in the design, so that's good. We want it to look a little different too. Anytime you add a shade or a darker value, it's going to set something back or behind or further away from your eyes. It looks pretty good here. All right. So